Mailee Smith joins us. Mailee Smith, Senior Director of Labor Policy at the Illinois Policy Institute. An in-depth deep dive into the ridiculous demands of the Chicago Teachers Union before things like strike and all that stuff is thrown around. Mailee, welcome. You know, when Stacey Davis Gates did her we want $50 billion and we're not kidding thing, and because we can, people need to know that the entire budget for the city of Chicago is about $17 billion.
Right.
You know, so just an insane thing. Did she ever say that was a joke?
She never did say it was a joke. And we've been digging into the contract. You know, we've been saying these are CTU's most radical demands yet, but it really does put a new light on it when you look at the costs. And we looked at some of the provisions, and it could cost Chicagoans at least $10 to $14 billion over the course of the contract. And this is only the cost that we were able to calculate. There are a number of things they're demanding that you can't know what they would cost. And that's in addition to the current budget, which is approaching $10 billion a year. So this is an extraordinarily expensive contract. It could potentially hit her sort of tongue-in-cheek comment that it would cost taxpayers $50 billion. And with the majority of district expenses funded by property taxes, it's going to hit residents hard if Brandon Johnson doesn't stand up for the people during negotiations.
Mailee, did I read that they had, that maybe this was leaked? It was a 142-page document that just had a set of demands for what the union had wanted for this when this comes due, when the budget comes due. Right.
Yes, it's 142 pages. And CTU has said that they have 700 plus provisions that they are proposing. So 700 plus demands that they are making on the district.
All right, so Mailee, here's the thing. If you look at this, and we did a bit of a deep dive yesterday, there's things in here that we don't even understand the titles for, you know, for these new jobs that they're creating. So let me just go through a couple of these and follow along at home, kids. One of the things is stipends for national board certified teachers. This amounts to another pay raise. They could total $14,000 a year per teacher if it was agreed to. There's another $2 billion. But then you get into additional new personnel. What is a newcomer liaison?
So, yeah, that's a great question. And I think that has to do with the migrant crisis that Chicago is seeing. So those are people, I believe, that are at the schools to welcome and to transition people into the school who are not from the states. And, you know, and then one that goes along with that is $2,000 stipends for asylum seekers for those students. That's going to be another $10 to $40 million. So, you know, there are a number of provisions in here that are related to this crisis of migrants within the city that, you know, people are already upset with the way Brandon Johnson is handling.
What we're describing, aren't those guidance counselors and social workers, which would be a part of the payroll already?
Exactly. They're adding about 25 new bargaining unit positions. And the reason I phrase it that way is because this is less about what's good for students. It's less about what students need. It's more about adding positions that then are union members who are paying dues to the union. It's a
And it doesn't serve the rank and file. I want to get Andre in here, but a couple more positions I don't understand. One is a restorative justice coordinator.
Right. I have no idea.
Okay. What about an elementary school interventionist? Is this an elementary school? Is this somebody that's going to intervene if you can't zip your coat or color?
Yeah, and, you know, back on the restorative justice coordinator, I joke I don't know, but I have dug into that. Like, what's the definition? What does CPS say that is? And it's very unclear. I really don't know. And a lot of these, if you were to look at the current contract, it's already like 380 pages. I don't suggest it unless you're having trouble sleeping at night. But there are all sorts of positions. They have names for things that I've never heard of before. And I've actually recently been looking at New York, their contract. I've looked at LA's contract. Surprisingly, they're simpler. than the Chicago Teachers Union.
Well, based on how much the teachers union's gotten away with in the past few years, I got to tell you, I'm not surprised. And the amount of power that's centralized with the CTU is outrageous and does not serve the rank and file teachers. The other new position I don't understand, climate action champion, someone specializing with training and certification to be an expert in climate science. I fully believe in a climate crisis. I fully believe in global warming. I also fully believe that the science teacher should be handling that, and there should be a curriculum that addresses it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so exactly. And this is a position that will be at every school. And the things that you're talking about, the restorative justice coordinator, the climate champion, these are at every school. And I stress that because they're at every school regardless of enrollment. So we have schools that are completely under-enrolled. They're not anywhere near their capacity. And they, for example, Douglas has 33 students. So we're talking about adding these positions at every school, even if there are very few students there.
I just laugh. I'm flipping through some of the demands in the 142 pages, Mailee. And as a taxpaying resident of the city of Chicago, I actually would like some of these as well. I can't imagine some of these will actually come to fruition, like fully funding infertility, paying for weight loss drugs such as Ozempic, offering free CTA passes for all students and employees.
Right. And that's in addition to the 100% electric bus fleet.
Right.
So
and the pay raises.
Bus fleet plus CTA passes for all students. Exactly.
Yeah, and the electric bus thing is so far ahead of the curve that it's not even logical. We're a generation away from people driving electric cars en masse, and as a majority, and the school's saying this as some sort of guise under, well, gas is expensive. Well, so is electricity and the way it's produced. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make sense. The library books thing I get, the retirement bonus, okay, maybe, even though there's so much double dipping going on. But one of the other things that jumps out is this affordable housing thing. We don't do affordable housing or housing stipends for cops,
right? Or
firemen,
firefighters, or
first
nurses.
Responders.
Yeah.
So
right.
why are we doing it for teachers?
And so that was. They have said they want to see 10,000 new affordable housing units. So we know that's going to be close to potentially $5 billion. What we weren't able to calculate was that program to help new teachers buy homes. And some of the other housing assistance demands that they're wanting. So, this $14 billion that we're estimating, that's only the things that we can calculate. And you're exactly correct. We don't do that for other positions. It's not built, and particularly in the private sector, none of us have and also here's your salary and your housing assistance. And these are teachers that will, under these demands, be getting 9% annual base wage increases plus step increases. So taking the average teacher in Chicago from $93,000 a year to about $144,000 a year. So those are not the people that should be getting housing assistance. That's not where that money should be spent.
No, and as a matter of fact, and great job by our director of research and our director of TikTok, Miranda, because she gave us great notes on this segment. CTU salary demands, as you just mentioned, could create an average salary in 27-28 of $145,000 for 190 work days, and also getting an average of $58,000 for a surrogacy contract, meaning if you had the surrogacy contract and the affordable benefits, or I should say the non-affordable benefits they're demanding, you're well over $200,000 per teacher.
That's right, and why not do that, right? Why not? That's
well, that's how you get to $50 billion.
Right. Right. It definitely creates an incentive to not be in the classroom. In addition to that, we've looked at the days off they're demanding. Teachers within the district under CTU's contract already have 43 days off a year that they can take. They're looking to increase that to at least 45 days a year. It ends up being, when you look at the actual school days, 15% of the time they're out of the classroom potentially. So that's, we look at this and we say this provision doesn't help students. This provision doesn't help students. There are actually provisions that they are demanding that would hurt students, not just taxpayers, but the students that are in the schools themselves.
And as many have said before, in a school system that's failing delivering qualified students to move forward and doing the greatest disservice to these students because they're being passed upward without passing basic competency exams. We see the state's record continue to drop in math and science, for instance. It's outrageous. It's like asking for a new stadium when your team can't win. Right. It doesn't make any sense. Listen, you can get all of this with the Illinois Policy Institute. Where do we go?
At illinoispolicy.org, we have a number of articles on this, spelling it out. You can also get the link to the 142 pages of demands themselves. And
obviously, this is the biggest test Brandon Johnson will face if he ever wants to separate himself from the image of being a puppet for the union.
Exactly.
So, Mailee, thank you.
Thanks, Mailee.
Thank you.